Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 75 of our Reddit series. This one's going to be a bit more entitled parents, and I know you're going to love this one. I've tried to get shorter stories for this episode so you actually get more stories in the same amount of time, so I hope you guys like that. If you do, don't forget to smash the like button, then sit back, relax, and get annoyed at some entitled parents. So, a bit of info, I'm pretty able-bodied, however, I have issues with double incontinence, meaning I usually wear a nappy or pull-up when I'm out for long periods of time. I decided to go looking for new jeans at a shop that rhymes with Sparks and Mensa, when nature happened and I needed to change. So I go into the parents' room, as the accessible toilet was out of order, and the parents' room has its own toilet as well as the changing area. I'm mid-change when this nutjob starts thumping on the door and rattling the handle. I did shout I'd just be a few more minutes and the handle rattling stops, but the door kept getting banged on hard. No clue if she thought whoever was in there would magically disappear, but whatever. I finished changing, washed my hands, and then opened the door to be met by a middle-aged woman with a rather fragrant baby. She started berating me for taking so long when her child needs changing, and that her kid would most likely get a rash because of me, and then she noticed that I had no child. She started shouting at me, calling me disgusting for being in there, and that I must be some kind of pervert. At this, I just pushed past her and leave. I didn't attempt to explain to her why I was in there because she was so irate I didn't think it would matter. What annoys me most about the encounter wasn't actually the insults, but it was the fact that she didn't know who was in the room before trying to beat down the door. Well, at least it's good to know that even in exceptional circumstances, people aren't allowed to use a free bathroom without being labelled a pervert. I mean, it would be one thing for a dude to walk into a woman's changing room with a bunch of women in there and vice versa, but if you're going to work yourself up about some dude going to the bathroom in a locked door that nobody else can get into, well, you have some problems. I'm French American and I live near Paris. A few months ago, I had to renew my American passport because the old one had expired. It was the first time I had to renew it since I was 18, and I'm 20 when this story happened, so I decided that I would go to the American embassy or consulate. I'm not sure which one it is exactly, but I was without my mother for the first time to get things done on my own like a big boy. Usually hanging out with my mother in any public place means that people immediately learn that we're American, seeing as we usually speak English when there isn't too many people and French in big crowds out of respect for the people around us. But her thick accent usually rats us out as Americans. Anyway, since she didn't come with me that day, it meant that people wouldn't automatically assume I was American, which is important for the rest of the story. So, the day of the meeting, I show up at the embassy 15 minutes before the time of the meeting as instructed, and the line is a mess. There are 2 TSA checks, one outdoors and one indoors. In between the two, the line of people is orderly. But before the first TSA check, everyone was just bunched up and participating in the Hunger Games in order to get in before everybody else. When I got there, I phoned my mother, anxious that I would be late for my meeting. She told me to just get the TSA agents and tell them that I had a meeting, blah blah blah. When I hung up, the French people around me told me that Americans had been called forth earlier, so I got to skip the first line by waving my passport in the air. Turns out that having an American passport at the American embassy makes you a VIP. So, I'm waiting in line for the second TSA check, and I'm waiting for the TSA agent to call me into the building. As I'm waiting, I hear commotion behind me, and some lady, who is the entitled mum, is pushing everyone aside, yelling, "I'm an American. I have priority. Let me through." She had a 5-ish-year-old boy with her, and as she gets up to my level, she tries to push me aside, yelling, "I have to get this boy his passport." Now this woman was 5 feet tall with her arms up, and I'm 6 feet tall, and though I'm not very heavy, about 145 pounds, I don't budge easily. She looks at me in shock as if I had killed her son or someone and shouts, "How dare you? I'm American. I have every right over you here, now let me pass." I had all my papers out in my left hand and my current passport at the time was underneath, so she couldn't have known that I was American. The TSA agent gestures for me to come forth and the entitled mum starts cutting in front of me and telling her boy, "Come on, we can finally go in," and yanks his arm. I gently but firmly grab her by the shoulder, stop her in her tracks and move forward. She looks me dead in the eye and says, "What is wrong with you? I should go first. I told you, I'm an American." As she says so, I pull my passport from underneath my papers, I wave it in her face and say, "Well, so am I." And that's when one of the TSA agents from the first control point comes up to take her back to the start of the line. As I enter the building, I shouted back, "Enjoy the line with the French people," and proceeded with the protocol. Is it just me, or is it really weird that I feel like I've got a really clear mental image of exactly what our last two entitled parents would look like? I can't be the only one that tries to conjure up an image in my head of what the entitled parents look like when we're reading out these stories. Like, there's always this specific way that I picture them, but I don't know how to describe it exactly. Like I said, it can't be just me, so let me know in the comments exactly how you picture an entitled parent. I generally work out at the gym around 5 PM, but due to various reasons, it got pushed back to 7:30 that day. The gym is in my apartment complex, so nothing fancy, but serviceable. At this time, it was empty, and I thought I'll have a good time. Apparently not. Just FYI, the minimum age for being allowed in is 15. I'm here working with my weights when I see two kids, around the age of 7 or 9, walking in. Now the first thing when you enter the gym is the rack where the weights are kept. I see them heading towards there, and I immediately stop them and ask them why they're in here. They clearly wanted to go in and pick up the heavy weights or something. Then they make an excuse that they want to drink water, and I make sure they just do that and leave. I don't say anything more than that. A while later, when I'm about to leave, they come back with their parents. The parents were unreasonable, and apparently I had bullied them and scolded them harshly for playing outside the gym, where the water cooler was kept. I tried to explain the situation, but they didn't listen. I didn't want it to escalate, so I let it go. The next day, the guy responsible for the gym tells me that these people are kind of well off and are quite influential in the society board or something, and they have raised a complaint against me, apparently for harassment. Now the guy is cool, and he covered for me, but at the end of the day, everyone was told just to turn a blind eye to whatever their kids do around. Stupid, I know. A few days pass, and I continue working out at my normal time, so I didn't see them again. Good riddance, I thought. Then one day, I heard that apparently the kids tried to enter the gym again, but this time there was no one there to stop them. One of the kids ended up hurting his leg thanks to some weights or something, and as a result had a bad sprain. In fact, when security finally found him, he was in a terrible state. This time, the parents had no one to blame but themselves and their negligence. I didn't see any of that, but the in-charge told me about the entire ordeal and how he feels that it's the parents' fault for not being responsible and such. I still feel a bit bad that I couldn't help the kids from getting hurt. Really, you've just got to feel bad for this kid, not just because he got hurt, but because you know he has horrible role models and he's going to turn out just like them one day. They clearly show an inability to discipline their kids and are obviously horrible role models for them, and they just think they can use their money to do whatever they want. What a great way to raise your child. You're setting them up from failure from day one. Good on you. Okay, so this happened when I was maybe 5 or 6, and I was kinda groggy and coughing up water for most of it. So most of what I heard was just muffled shouting and racist crap that my dad said afterwards. Anyway, here's what I can remember from the story. We went to live with my dad when I was 4, and my dad used to really love old Western films. So one day, when he was watching this film called Hondo, where there's a certain scene where John Wayne throws a boy into a river to teach him how to swim, my dad thought this was great, and I vaguely remember him looking at me weird as I watched with him. I was a naive little kid, so I didn't really think anything of it. Even when he said we were going for a walk at a local lake later, my young brain didn't put the pieces together. One second, I was stood looking at the ripples on the lake made by birds. The next, I was immersed in cold, murky lake water. Unlike the river in the film, the lake was a lot deeper and had a lot of clay, which my frantic attempts to get back to the surface kicked up into a thick, grey mist. There was also quite a lot of fairly large rocks, one of which I must have smacked my head against. It may have only been like 10 feet, but I was a very small kid and was absolutely freaking out since I'd never even been swimming in a pool before. Unfortunately, my panic didn't last that long, since the fact that I'd swallowed quite a lot of water, coupled with the fact that I'd smacked my head, meant that I passed out very quickly. My saving grace was this honestly beautiful human being who was a large black man who had been walking his very fluffy dog and saw what my dad did. If it hadn't been for this guy, I probably would have actually died. And the first thing I remember was this guy knelt over me with his dog, nuzzling my hand. I was coughing up a lot of water, so all I heard for a while was the muffled shouting as the dog kept pawing at me and nuzzling me with his very soft face. I was shivering and probably looked like a drowned rat, so when I finally stopped coughing, I just grabbed a hold of the dog and held onto its fluffy, soft white coat for dear life. Meanwhile, my senses were slowly returning to me, and I came to realize that the shouting I was hearing was my dad screaming red-faced at my savior, calling him a pedophile and all sorts of racial slurs, as well as ranting about how his son wasn't a faggot so he couldn't have possibly drowned. The argument was pretty heated, and I honestly don't know what would have happened if the now very angry black man hadn't grabbed his phone and said that he was going to call the police. My dad grabbed me, ran to our car, and drove home so fast that I'm surprised we didn't crash. After we got home, my dad made sure that I knew if I ever said anything, I'd be put into foster care. And I knew how horrific that would be since I knew people who had gone through that. Better one parent doling out punishment than half a dozen older boys beating the crap out of me. Plus, my parents had never touched me in sexual ways, so I was definitely not going to roll the dice on that one. A woman from the social did end up visiting a while later because someone complained about possible domestic violence, but she was stupid and honestly believed that I was just a clumsy kid. And the worst thing in my life was my dad's god-awful chicken and leek bake, so everything ended as well as it could have. I've never even taken a bath since and still despise water, but it's not that much of a problem, so all in all, it wasn't that bad. Just a fairly interesting entitled parent story. After I finished typing this, I told the story to my girlfriend and she told me I only would have been put into foster care if I had no other family members that were able to look after me. Therefore, I could have just lived with my dad's parents. Those effers lied to me. All those years, I was so scared of saying the wrong thing or someone noticing how I was always getting into scraps, and my parents were just protecting themselves for going to jail. This might just be a me thing, but as a kid, if that was happening to me and I was literally at risk of being murdered by my parents for some joke, I don't know, but I would have definitely run the risk of getting put in foster care. Like, even to this day, if I was this kid and my parents were still treating me like this, I would still try and do something about it, because this is one of the most messed up stories I've ever heard on Entitled Parents. My mum had this company over, as she runs a small business, and they'd always bring their brat that I'd have to entertain. Now, I was in high school at the time, and I had a pretty good gaming computer in my room. I was pretty tech savvy and now studying CS, so I dual booted Ubuntu and Windows. The brat caught his eye on the PC because I was foolish enough to allow him in my room. Of course, he said he wanted to play on it. I declined to let him because I was running a compute benchmark on it with Prime 95. He insisted on playing and made a fuss. His parents came in and told me to allow him to play. My parents, wanting to appease them, told me to allow him. Alright, but I'm not going to restart the computer and boot into Windows for him to play games. I watched him try and fail to install Roblox on the computer. Roblox isn't out for Linux yet. He complained to his mother, who was convinced that I did some trickery to not allow her precious angel to play. I told her the truth and that Roblox is not supported on Linux. She did not understand this and told me, then make it work. By now, the child had thrown a temper tantrum over not being able to play Roblox, after which the father poked his head in and promptly removed both the upset idiot who was throwing a fit and the child. My mum still managed to not lose their business though, and it was probably just because of the husband. I think we just uncovered a new entitled parent logic. I don't care that it's impossible, do it for me now. Some people will just never learn, and I think I've already said it this episode, but this kid's already going to be facing an uphill battle just because of his parents. So one day, me and some of my friends who are all 14 to 16 were playing football in a nearby park when this child, probably of ages 8 to 10, shows up and says that he wants to play. Well, we disagree and don't let him and continue our match. But this fat boy, sorry, but he was fat, like thick, is stubborn and no. He will play on his own terms. He jumps behind one of our goalposts, which is basically just 2 trees, and him being small, he's out of our vision. And you know what happens next. We are all wearing football cleats FYI, and I kick the ball into the goal as if I'm All Might, and lo and behold, the goalkeeper misses and the guy is grazed by the ball. We all rush to him and snap. He starts crying like we broke his knee or something. We are all puzzled till my friend shouts, "Run." There's a middle-aged woman coming right for us with a goddamn bat. She picks up our ball and starts walking away with that pathetic child of hers. We go to her and explain everything, but she is entitled to that ball. Now, it has gone to another level. A friend of mine snaps and snatches her son from her and warns her that if she doesn't return the ball, her son becomes our football. She starts shouting even louder, and now that she was busy, I punch the ball and snatch it and run away with my friends. This story has a lot less, I suppose, substance to it than a lot of the entitled parent stories we've read, but oh my goodness. Her son will become the ball if she doesn't give the ball back. Like, that is one of the best things I have ever heard on this series. If that ain't the best way to get back at an entitled parent, I really don't know what is. This is absolutely genius and I love this kid forever. I feel as if I shouldn't have to say this, but I mean, I don't condone people taking kids as hostage, just so you all know, but in the context of the story, this is hilarious. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm just going to take a second to plug a couple of my social medias, including our Discord server. I do have a Twitter and an Instagram if you want to follow me on both of those. They are both at Bumfris, and feel free to send me a message and I'll do my best to respond. I also just want to take a second to say thank you so much for all the love lately, all of the comments, the likes, the subscribers, just the fact that you guys tune in and watch my videos every day. It really does make my day. Every single one of you is the backbone of this channel and I really cannot express how much I appreciate that. Without you guys, this channel would be nothing, and I love making these videos for you guys and I love the fact that you enjoy them. So on that note, I will wrap things up for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to take a second again to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Entitled Parents. Bye.